Hey guys, welcome back to the Little Real Estate Podcast. Today, I'm super excited, as I am every time we do the podcast, to have Matt Lewis of League Real Estate join us. Thanks for joining, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I wanted to have you on the podcast because you are the only person I know that continually wins most influential person in Fort Worth or something to that effect. So it's always a pleasure to hear what you have to say.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, it's a high honor to be kind of roped into buying ads every year for Fort Worth magazine. So.
Yeah, you can be the most influential person in Fort Worth for $160.
Yes, we're going to give you this award, and we also want to charge you $3,000 to put your photo back in our magazine. So yes, but thanks, man.
Yeah, I didn't intend for us to start there, but that is such a funny. That is such a funny thing about the real estate business is you get all these awards, like Scotsman Guide in the mortgage. You know what the Scotsman Guide is?
Yeah.
So it's like a really big deal in the mortgage world. People put in their email signature, like they name their kid Scotsman Guide, after they get it. And so I was fortunate to get it. And it never, to this day, once a week, you get an email that somebody's trying to sell me a Scotsman Guide plaque.
Yeah, plaque and an ad. And yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So. They actually won't let you, I'm probably going to get sued for this, but they won't let you even say you're a Scotsman Guide person unless you pay now. So
oh really?
It's gotten I guess it's probably like Real Producers. Is that
it's the same thing except Real Producers just charges you guys instead of us. That's their trick.
That's typically how it works.
Totally free for you. We're just gonna hit up Jake Little and his other guys.
See who's your referral partner?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, okay, so I always like to start the podcast with a little background. Okay. So would love to hear the Matt Lewis story. Really, we'll get to the real estate piece, but give us a quick, where are you from? What was growing up like for Matt Lewis? And then we'll jump into the real estate piece.
Yeah, man, for sure. So I'm from Midland, Texas, originally from West Texas. It's funny. I was mindlessly scrolling on Reddit the other day, and they were like, hey, what's the worst places you've ever been? And we're talking the whole world, and Midland got a few votes. It really did. But yes, I grew up in the oil patch, which I actually loved growing up out there. My parents, grandparents, a lot of them were West Texas, Eastern New Mexico. So grew up there. My dad was in the commercial real estate business. He had a commercial property management company when I was growing up out there. I guess stories make good podcasts. So he actually was there in the 80s. If you're familiar with West Texas, Midland, it's 100% reliant on the oil industry, booms and busts. There'll be man camps one day, and then everything's dead the next, depending on how oil prices are going. But my dad was there in the mid 80s when oil went bust. I was 6 years old. I still remember it. Everybody lost their jobs, and he was actually cleaning out his office of the basement of the building he worked in. And a phone call came in, and he picked up the phone, and it was John Hancock Insurance, who had just foreclosed on the building he was officing out of, and they were looking for a property manager. So because he was the one sitting there with the phone, he took the job, and that's how his company got started. It was literally he was being transitioned out. And the whole downtown space, Midland has a pretty large downtown for a town its size because of all the oil companies. All those buildings were vacant. So real estate was a funny thing for me growing up because it swung in Midland way more than it swings in other places. But it was fascinating. I watched my dad do it. He transitioned and started doing a site location for restaurants when I was in high school. And I worked on all those restaurants and kind of got to watch their company grow. One thing, the guy he worked for, his name was Bobby Cox. Bobby owns a bunch of restaurants, things like that in town.
Yeah.
At one point, he was the largest Blockbuster franchisee in Texas, Bobby was.
No kidding.
Yes. And I remember talking to my dad, and my dad was like, hey, one thing you'll know about Bobby is Bobby almost always owns the real estate under whatever he's doing. So if he has a Blockbuster, if he has a Roses, he has a this, he always owns the real estate. That's just what he does. I got to watch Blockbuster slowly go out of business while Bobby slowly made more money because all he did was roll those Blockbusters out and roll somebody else into that building space that he owned. And it was great. And watching him do that and say, hey, he's actually probably going to do better than a struggling Blockbuster franchise just by putting this in. It really was kind of a fascinating education to watch as a kid.
Yeah.
And so, I've always kind of been into real estate, I guess, so to speak, family legacy or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Too long an answer probably for that.
Well, that's so, I feel like this Bobby Cox guy, I feel like we all know Bobby Cox.
Yeah.
That no matter what they do, you're like, man, it's 2005 and Bobby's like, I just got a bunch of Bitcoin. And you're like, Bobby, that's crazy. That's electronic currency. And now Bobby's, owns 57 Bitcoins.
Exactly.
could retire. So
Yeah, it is good though, man. It's if you're lucky to have like really not only successful people, but people that are just smart. Like, because those things sometimes are mutually exclusive, but just being around really smart people is really fun, man. And just
Yeah.
kind of watching the way
Yeah.
they think and what they do.
Absolutely.
It's a great thing. So yeah, I've had a few people like that I've been lucky enough to get to watch.
Yeah.
Kind of do things like that.
So okay, so you're in Midland and you're
Yep.
you're getting some exposure more in commercial real estate.
Yes.
and
So
property
100%
management.
commercial real estate was what my dad was for sure.
How did you get out of Midland and well, let's start there. How did you get out of Midland?
Went to Baylor. So 4 years in Waco. Loved Waco. Waco was not the Waco it is now when I was there, but still.
Chip
very
and
close.
Joanna hadn't-
Chip and Joanna
hadn't
had not taken over
invaded,
yet.
yeah.
I do have a Chip Gaines story though, if you want it later.
Let's
It's
make
a
it
good
the
story.
Chip
Yeah,
Gaines
put it in the Chip
story.
Gaines
Yeah,
category.
okay.
But yeah, so went there. Did not consider much about what I was going to do with my future when I was there. I
Yeah.
had a good time, did all that kind of stuff, and then I got out and went to work for an appraisal company, which I had done an internship for in the summer one time, and I thought this is gonna be great. I thought I really wanted to be an appraiser. That's what I really thought I wanted to do, like commercial appraisals. The company I interned for, the guys traveled around the country every week. Like you'd come in on Monday and they had this big whiteboard, and they did CVSs, and so they would have this of like 8 cities that they had appraisals in, and based on like the owners of the company picked first. So like if there was a Vegas, or a New York, like the owners took that one, right?
Yeah.
And then the next senior guy, and me being the young guy, I got stuck with whoever was the bottom guy.
Yeah.
So I was in like eastern New Mexico. The nicest place I went in a year and a half was Kansas City.
Garland,
That was
Texas.
yes,
Yeah.
that was Kansas City was like my Super Bowl, right? Like that was the coolest place I went. But it wasn't what I thought it was. I ended up doing what they call properties appraisal, which meant I was doing appraisals on non-income producing commercial real estate, which was schools, libraries, city halls, cemeteries. I've done a few cemeteries.
Really?
Yes. So yeah, that's the
Sure, there's
appraising
some good
cemeteries.
stories. That,
Yeah,
you
it's-
always have to appraise it at night.
yeah,
right?
they only
It's
make
like-
you go
yeah,
there, no
yeah.
flashlight. Yeah. So no, did that for a little bit, did not like it, and so transitioned out and had a few kind of side quest kind of deals.
Yeah.
Before I went back into real estate, but yeah, that was kind of where I bounced into and really kind of started entering the real estate market 2007, 2008, right about when everything crashed.
You don't think about like libraries and cemeteries and these places needing appraisal.
Yeah.
I think there's especially in like our TikTok culture today, like you get on social media and I'm talking to our producer over here who will be mic'd up next time,
Yes.
everybody. You get on social media and you see these people, they're like, I bought this investment property and this, commercial
Yeah.
asset. And it's like, yeah, that all is real. I mean, a lot of times it is real. There's some really, sexy real estate deals to be had. But a lot of it is like normal, every building you drive by has a commercial real estate agent that sold it and was appraised. And it's not always as glorious as, as it may seem.
I mean, honestly, it sounds cliche, but it's the Warren Buffett method of, buy utilities, right?
Yeah.
The boring stuff oftentimes is the best stuff, the safest stuff. I've got a friend whose job is he prints the water bills for the city of Fort Worth and surrounding other people. That's his deal. It's a great gig. I mean, great gig. It's boring, but it's a great gig.
Dude, so I lived in, sorry, this is a side quest speaking
Yeah.
of, but I lived in Houston for a little bit. So after A&M, I got an engineering degree, believe it or not. I think went into the oil and gas business, got sent to Houston. And Houston was so fascinating because you would have these guys who didn't go to high school, had no education, and they'd, fumble into, let's say, Halliburton's office. And Halliburton would say, man, we really need somebody to make this little bolt, but it's got to be this specialized little thing. And he'd be like, well, I bet I can make that thing
I can come up with
there.
something.
I bet I can make that thing. So he'd buy a few mills and lathes, and before you know it, he's selling $2.5 million of them a year.
Yeah.
Driving a Rolls Royce in his overalls, and like that was a thing in Houston. It blew my mind. Speaking of things that are not glorious, but you have to be done, and that's the name of the game in Houston, and got to see that a little bit. So
No, it really is. I've always liked that. Infrastructure things, those kind of things, they're boring, but they do well.
yeah, they
It's
absolutely do. No, they can't automate plumbing. So
Nope.
okay, so let's go back. It's 2008, 2009. You're kind of transitioning into residential real estate. At
Yeah,
that time?
actually, so I had been doing a like I said earlier, I was doing like a water purification company
Yeah.
that I had gotten into with a guy I actually grew up working for in Midland. I like mowed yards for him and stuff.
Yeah.
And so he had a concept in Midland. He brought us to Fort Worth, asked everyone to join. I was doing the appraisal thing, hated it, did that. Been doing that for like 5 years. It was really cool. Had a real estate aspect to it. But really what happened was like 2009, my cousin who I grew up with in Midland was a banker. He worked for Frost. And we were literally just saying like, man, there's a lot of cheap houses out there because this is 09, 2010 when it was crazy. It was houses for $32, $33 a foot. So many things on the market that you could get up in the morning and look at all the things you thought might be good buys and you just couldn't get to all of them in one day. I would have to pick a direction, like, okay, I'm here. So today I'm gonna go look at everything in this section of town because I just can't. It was almost overwhelming the amount of homes that were for sale that you thought, man, that's really cheap. Seems like I should be looking at that. So we did that and we decided we're going to try to buy one. We went and found one. It was actually here close to where you are now. I found it. I went and joined the board, just walked in there and was like, hey, I want to join. And they're like, okay. So
What board?
Fort Worth Association of Realtors. So the board of realtors, like how you get MLS access.
Got it.
Is through the board.
Got it.
I wanted MLS access to look at houses. Never had done any kind of residential real estate before. Didn't know how it worked. Didn't know. Luckily,
But you had your license
I had my
already.
broker's license. I'd had it for years, never used it.
Yeah.
But I had it. So I just walked in. I was like, I have this. Like, okay. They gave them money and they let me on. And so I'm just playing with the most, no brokerage, no nothing, just looking at houses. We find one because his name's Dave. Dave and he helps find us the money and we buy it. And we do like the worst, like, flip job ever, like trying to make it a rental.
Yeah.
So we spend like $800. Like it's crazy how little money we spend. It looks awful. Like, but we rent it and we're making like $300 a month. And we're like, this is kind of cool. You know, we made $300.
Yeah.
And so we're like, let's do one more. And so we do one more. And then that's all the money we have. We can't do any more. Right. But we had two. And so we were able to take it to some people and be like, hey, we got two of these and it's making a little bit of money. Like we should buy some more. Do you want more? So we kind of built like, we didn't even know what we were doing. We built a fund, even though we didn't know that was what it was called. We were just like, hey, can we have some money? And we will buy a house and give you some back.
Like to your like family or your
family, friends,
anybody?
People we went to school with,
Yeah.
anybody that would listen to us. And really, it was just the two of us. We had two houses, but this is kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think we can do more because, like I said, there's more to look at in a day.
Yeah.
And I wish I could have said, oh my gosh, we totally saw the market turning around in the next, we didn't. All we did was like, hey, you can make $300 a month off these houses. We should get more.
Yeah.
So we kind of built a fund, and that was kind of my first intro into real estate. So I kind of came in differently than most people did.
Okay, so it's like 2008, 2009. Most people are probably like panicking, right? Like, were there other people doing this? Or
I had a really influential lunch with a guy. I still remember it, probably about 15 years ago. It was in property management industry. I had known him through some friends, and we went to lunch one day just so I could ask him questions.
Yeah.
And he literally sat down at his like spreadsheet in front of me, and he's like, Matt, I own 80 properties in Fort Worth. And he's like, here's the tax value of them, and here's what I owe. And he goes, right now, I owe more than the tax value is on almost every house that I have. And he's like, but I'm not panicking because I'm not selling. He's like, so yes, while values are down now, he's like, I'm still cash flowing on the rent that I'm getting and I'm not selling. So am I upside down? Theoretically, yes, but in reality, no. And that was kind of one of those, like, as a young guy, I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like he's right.
Yeah.
Like just because we're down now doesn't mean if I can make $300 a month on this for 10 years, in 10 years will I be down? Probably not.
Yeah.
And that flipped my thinking a little bit. So, and I'm eternally grateful because most people were. It was like, get rid of this.
Yeah.
And there were so many of them who had been through the foreclosure process
Yeah.
that there were bank-owned REO houses everywhere.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even people panicking. It was literally people that had lost their home. And so that was kind of where we were walking around looking at stuff.
That's so crazy. Dave Ramsey's like probably like rolling over, not in his grave because he's alive. His bed, hearing that story. I mean, I feel like that's pretty unconventional. There's a lot of risk in that.
There is. I mean, but again, I don't talk Warren Buffett, but Buffett says, you buy when there's blood in the streets, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do. Again, we didn't know. The thing we had going for us was we were young and we didn't know enough to be scared. And so you just kind of like, hey, this is working. And I've talked to a few guys who are doing the same thing. And like I said, we're making $300 a month. So let's just do a few more. I wish we'd have said we had big long-term goals, but really we were just doing it because it made short-term
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
not knowing, kind of where we were going, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
So okay, so you had a little bit of a different intro into real estate. So you guys did that for how long before you thought maybe I could do this?
I mean, to be honest, I'm still doing it. So I still
17 years in?
I still own a few of those properties that we bought 15 years ago.
Wow.
Now they've been through various, configurations and partnerships and all that, but some of those properties we still have to this day. And so I really have never stopped, even since that day. Just buy, sell, trade, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've been doing that, and I still do it now.
Do you do it all locally?
Mostly, I really like to be able to drive by and touch the things. That's just
Yeah.
me. So almost everything I do, Tarrant, Parker, and Johnson. Those are kind of my
Yeah.
home bases.
Tarrant adjacent. So okay, so 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009, market softened dramatically. I don't think anybody doesn't know that. So home values dropped. Well, I don't even. I
30,
don't know,
40%.
30, 40%.
Easy,
Yeah. Really, really significant drop. So right now, real estate values are not doing that, but there's a little bit of softening in the market. Does this feel at all like 2008, 2009?
No. I'm 45, so I don't know if we'll ever see a 2008, 2009 again. Maybe we will, but if we do, you'll know it, because this is nothing like that. I mean, the sheer seller's market that was, or buyer's market, that was unbelievable. It wasn't so much the percentage drop, which was huge, but it was also the velocity at which it fell. I mean, you realize that over a year, things just went crazy. And this was the time that, Bear Stearns was closing and all this stuff was going nuts. And if you're a big short guy, like, this was that time.
Yeah.
And so I don't see us there. That being said, it has been a crazy 15 years in the real estate market.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, really has been, to watch it kind of ebb and flow like it has. Because I also wonder if we'll ever see anything like we did in 21 through 23 again.
Yeah.
Which I know most people that are probably listening to this that are interested in this kind of stuff probably were a part of, which was equally as interesting in the complete other side of the coin.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about this a lot in presentations and things about, like, what is normal.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say what is normal. Like, was 2008, 2009 normal? Was pre-2008, 2009 normal? Was 21 normal?
I think in my head, like 2017, 2018, and my little 20-year glimpse of real estate, that was the most normalcy that I personally have seen. Because I got in the crash, things recovered, it was bouncy. But 2017, 2018, looking back, was relative. It was still a little bit of a seller's market, but it was relatively normal compared to what we experienced 09 through probably 11, and then what we experienced from COVID up to 23, and then even now, which is still a very kind of unpredictable market that we've kind of backed ourselves into a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, okay, I want to, I'm a big side quest guy.
All
so
right.
we'll keep going on side quests and then keep coming back to your story. So you're doing the investing thing, and then now fast forward today, you founder of League Real Estate, really big player in the DFW market. So how did you bridge from buying a couple houses with your cousin and not having any idea what you're doing to, hey, let's go help other people buy houses?
Yeah, no,
as
good
a real estate
question.
Service.
So like I said, I've always been doing that. Always done side quests as well. So mid-teens, I was doing a lot of work in that space for small funds. Because what a lot of
2014
through probably 2016, there were a lot of people entering the market, because in 2009, 2010, real estate, especially single family real estate, got institutionalized. What I mean by that is, before 09, 10, there wasn't big money funds coming in and buying single family real estate. It was mom and pop investors building small portfolios. But 12, 13, 14, all of a sudden, out of the crash when housing was still cheap, a lot of these large BlackRock kind of funds, American Home for Rent, a lot of these guys looked and said, hey, we can't really find any returns anywhere, but housing's kicking off 8, 9%.
Yeah.
And so they would come in and be like, we want 3.2, 1,500 square feet, and here's my buy box, and if you can find them, I will buy as many as you can bring me. Here's my box. And they would hand these out to guys like me, and so we would do a lot of that. And I would locate renovate, resell, all these for these funds. And it was really great. And I loved it. And it was because it was, here's your box, go get it, execute. That's kind of my style. And then about 2016, everybody's like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. We're kind of done with that. Prices hit a point to where the returns weren't there as much anymore. So a lot of those funds really scaled back their buying around that time. And so it meant less for us to do. So I was a little bit kind of looking for the next thing. I had gone partners in a trucking company. Terrible decision. Hated it. Don't do that.
Why? Okay, so I'm sorry, but I have seriously thought about doing trucking.
Okay.
I have a trucking background. I used to be a freight broker.
Okay.
In another life.
So I'll tell you about, mine was last mile delivery for like FedEx and things like that, where it's fulfillment from the center to the end customer.
Yeah.
And so we had trucks and employees and routes. I feel like the lesson I learned from that is it made money every month. It was a profitable business, but it was hard money. Like it was a hard dollar to earn. And some dollars are easier than others, right? Some jobs pay well and they're not that hard. Some jobs are really hard. They don't pay that well. This one consistently was really hard for what we got. And it was just, I was sitting at a Kinko's in Frisco on Christmas Eve, like 2016. And I was like, this job is terrible. Why am I doing this? Like, it's like 6:30. It should be Christmas Eve. I have kids.
Yeah.
I'm up here. I'm in Frisco. I'm an hour and a half away from home. And that was kind of point. I was like, I'm done with this. I was coming out of that. And really, I had known Jeff, who's one of my partners at League, for years. We lived on the same street, both kind of being in the real estate industry. We'd cross paths a few times. And then Luke, who's our other partner, actually his wife and my wife were friends because our kids went to the same elementary school. So Luke comes over one day for dinner. Jessica invites him over. We get to talking. I find out what he does, which he was working for a competing brokerage here, who's no longer around, as their director of marketing. Happened to be the same brokerage Jeff worked at. And Luke kind of kiddingly told me, he's like, hey, we've always wanted to start a brokerage. You have your license. You should totally start a brokerage with us. And I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds hard.
Did you like know him, or does he like,
not really?
He just kind of lobs this one.
I mean, we'd hung out a few times, but
let's go start a business.
Not really, but he was kind of joking about it. But I knew Jeff, and I knew, Jeff's very successful agent, done really well.
Yeah.
And I knew he knew Jeff. And so I couldn't kick the thought. So like a week later, I called him. I was like, hey, let's go eat. We went and ate. I was like, look, if Jeff was interested, I think this might work. And I was like, here's kind of what I think. And we met at Central Market and kind of like,
where all good things happen.
Yeah, where all good things happen, right? And kind of hashed out like some kind of skeleton framework. And then we just kept going. And we started meeting at nights after work and kind of like storyboarding out the whole thing and picking all the things. And then we launched in January, the three of us.
Of 2017.
2017. So we spent like 3 or 4 months in 16 just prepping. And then 2017, we launched out of a shared workspace over on Carroll and 7th Street. So yeah, we were there for 2 years in a small room. And yeah, we just started growing. And I mean, for whatever reason, we resonated with some agents, and then good agents attract good agents, which allowed us to start capturing more people. And
snowball.
Yeah, I think we kind of hit a little bit of a hole in the market, which was nice.
So that's 2017, and then so a year into it, were you guys like, yeah, this was a great idea? 2018.
I mean, we did by 2018. I think we probably had 20 agents under us, which was more than I thought we would.
Dude, that's crazy. So you're adding like an agent and a half a month.
We spent so much time, so much of our startup capital budget was spent on recruiting. It just was, and trying to get after. Because again, knowing the way agents communities work, you can attract good agents will follow.
Yeah.
And luckily, Jeff had really great relationships. I had no relationships. I didn't know anybody in the residential space at all.
You had relationships like with your family.
Yes, people liked me, but just not, but
not no relationships.
Yeah, but just the real estate people hadn't met me yet, Jeff. So they, but I didn't have many residential relationships at all. So Jeff did, and he was really key in kind of bringing that in. And once we got to like scale, where we had enough agents to justify, hey, now we can start doing some marketing. Now we can start actually spending some money. We were able to really start going, and that was where Luke really came in. That was his talent. Was he was really able to find good people like Austin and Kristen here filming this. They've been working with us forever, but that's the kind of, Luke was really good at kind of taking that marketing and making us something interesting to people.
Yeah.
So that was really where it started to kind of be like, this may be something kind of fun and kind of neat.
Okay, again, so you're starting a new thing. Like, are you nervous about it, or are you just kind of like, yeah, it makes sense, let's do it?
To be honest, I was super nervous, but remember, like I had been doing
Real estate.
with rentals and portfolios for a while. And so that was always like my safety. Like, hey, if this doesn't work, I've got these. I can always go back to doing that. So that, again, that's why I love telling people, like, it's really one of the greatest investments you can do for a multitude of reasons, which we can bore you with later. But I was able to do League because I had done that first. If I hadn't been doing that, had a little bit of residual income, a little bit of something, a skill set I could fall back on, it would have terrified me.
Yeah.
It would have been like, this is my shot, and if this doesn't work, like, I'm sell my house. And I was never in that position, which was really, really great. You can take more shots when you're not, you have this fear of losing everything.
For sure.
Right? Yeah.
For sure. So what was the niche that League filled? Like, what was the...
Yeah, good question. I mean, honestly, I feel like the biggest one was Fort Worth. Like, I think Fort Worth was such a city that was growing up, and it was such an amazing city. But at the time, I mean, even 8 years ago, we've added like 200,000 people. Fort Worth is growing like people don't even understand. If you look at it, when people come here, they market to Fort Worth like they would market to a suburb. They're like, hey, we're going to Dallas. We're going to put an office in Plano, in downtown, in Highland Park, and then we're going to put one in Southlake and Frisco, and in Fort Worth too, right? So we were looked at as a submarket of Dallas. And I think our approach was treating Fort Worth as like Fort Worth first, right? And we were hyper-local, hyper-sensitive. We talked about Fort Worth. We blogged about Fort Worth. We went after ages and neighborhoods that were classic Fort Worth neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I think that resonated with people, that we were a homegrown Fort Worth first, Fort Worth people brokerage. And then there just wasn't a really strong independent brokerage in our market. Like, there had been, but there'd been a bunch of consolidation right before we launched, and a bunch of the really strong independent brokerages had gotten bought out. And that kind of left a hole for some agents who kind of like that indie feel, where it's a little bit less expensive. It's a little bit easier to get stuff done. Yeah. And I think we filled that hole too. So I think that was kind of our niche. And what Luke was doing was pretty unique marketing wise. Lots of video, lots of social, lots of digital. That was where we spent the majority of our marketing dollars.
Yeah.
So
some SEO in there.
Some SEO. Yeah.
So I'll attribute our relationship to Luke's SEO because so in 2021, December 6, 2021, a day that'll live in infamy, is when I joined the mortgage business.
Yeah.
first day in the mortgage business. I literally don't know anything. Like, I don't know anything about it. I don't know if real estate's one word or two, So I guess Billy Mays, who's sitting down the hall, he was like, well, you need to call realtors. That's what we do. So I pick up the phone, or I get on Google first, and I Google Realtor Fort Worth. And the first link that shows up is League Real Estate. I'm like, that'll work. That works. I click on that, go to offices, go to Fort Worth, and the first person on the screen is Matt Lewis.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, alrighty, let's do this thing. So
start emailing people.
So I texted you.
Yeah.
And I said, I think something like, hey, Matt, this is Jake at Service First. We're doing some pretty cool new stuff with lending. We'd love to grab lunch sometime.
Yeah.
Dude, I literally don't, my license, like, the ink's not dry. And I'm like, just let's go for the big one.
Yeah.
Let's go for so yeah, you responded. I don't know if you remember. You probably don't remember that because
I do remember it, because that's not what you wrote, because I've told somebody this story before. If you're in the real estate business, we get a lot of our business is very interconnected between title and lenders and insurance. We all work together a lot. So those relationships are huge. People are trying to form relationships. So we get hit up a lot with like, hey, I'm a lender, I'm a this, I'm a that. Like, can we please catch up? And a lot of agents really insulate themselves from that. Yeah. But the text or email you wrote me was funny and kind of witty. And so I remember kind of thinking like, oh, this is kind of funny. And so that honestly, that was one of the reasons I responded, was because it was very different than something. You were something like, hey, I think I'm just going to keep calling you or something until you block me. It was just, it was something.
That's probably something.
It was something like that. Yeah. And so, because I do remember thinking that whatever you wrote me was kind of funny. Yeah. Which, knowing you now, totally fits.
Yeah. So, yes. Yeah. Which I think, like, if any success I've had has been with the people that get that. They're like, oh, that's funny. Yeah. And there's some people that are just like, what did he just say? Like, I can't believe he would say that. But, I work with another colleague when I was younger and dumber. I had nothing to lose either.
Right, that's
so
the other
like,
thing, right?
Like, whatever. So I called one agent at League, and he answers, and I probably called him 10 times. He
Yeah.
finally answers, and I remember I was driving on Montgomery when he called me back. I was like, hey, he knew who I was because I'd been blowing him up,
Yeah.
basically. And he was like, man, I really, really appreciate it. I've got 3 great lenders, and I really don't not looking to add anybody. And I said something to the effect of, well, that's fine. Like you can either work with me now, or you can wait until I put everybody else out of business.
You did.
I said that. He died laughing. He goes, all right, let's go to lunch. And now we're 100% captive with him.
That's
we got all
awesome.
his business. But yeah, I've got a really dry sense of humor.
Yeah.
So I've learned to taper that. With some people, you can't let the whole.
Have you put everybody out of business yet, or how's that going?
Since I started, 75% of all licensed mortgage originators have left the business.
God have mercy on the other 25% soul, I guess. You're coming for them.
3/4 of the way through.
It's only been a few years. That's pretty
Give
good.
it a few years, and
Yeah.
it may just be me. So,
Okay, Chase Bank, get ready.
oh man, yeah, Jamie Dimon's shaking
Yeah.
in his boots because of me. No, I'm just kidding. I probably got a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the market, but we're having more fun than
Yeah,
anybody else.
that's true.
That's what we're doing. So okay, so back to League.
Yeah.
It's 2021 Leagues. By the time I came around, League had 100 agents or so. I mean, it was a.
Probably, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I've got to ask real quick. So fun little thing is Service First moving. It'll be our largest physical location. Will be right next door to League.
Yeah.
We didn't. I wish I could say that we chose it for that reason, but maybe a good secondary reason
Yeah.
to be next door to League. But you guys have one of the coolest, if not the coolest, offices
I think so. Yeah.
in Fort Worth, especially in real estate. What is the story there? I know you've told it a million times.
No, it's
but
a great story.
for our
I mean,
people.
again, it's just like providence over what you're doing. But we started in the co-op space on 7th, outgrew it, moved to a bigger space behind Uncle Julio's here in Fort Worth, which is on the west side of town. An older building. It was actually the original Arlington Heights schoolhouse. Was our second office, which was really neat. Somebody looked up a picture of like a bunch of school kids standing in front of it and gave it to us. It was cool.
That's
So it had a lot of personality, and people liked that. And what we realized was people remembered that, and we were able to use the office in a lot of marketing, just taking pictures in front of it, using it. We did events there, it had a big yard, and it had personality. It didn't feel like a strip center or something else where all real estate offices kind of feel the same. We wanted to be memorable.
Yeah.
And we learned that from the Pershing office, but we were growing, it was too small. And across the street, which is our office now, it was a bed and breakfast. And it had been there forever. It was actually built in 1893. It was the third house built in the neighborhood of Arlington Heights in Fort Worth, which is one of the older neighborhoods. So the house was incredibly neat, but it was a bed and breakfast. But Jeff, in his very Jeff way, was like, oh, yeah, that place, I think my roommate, he went to Kansas State. My roommate at Kansas State, like, used to own that, or his uncle did, or some Jeff connection. And within a day, he's like, hey, I have the phone number of those people that own that place. And I was like, well, so I called them, same thing. I was like, hey, we looking for a new office and love your building. And if you ever want to sell, and she was actually like, actually, we really do want to sell. We want to go to Oklahoma and do a bed and breakfast there. So I went over there, and we were able to put under contract and got it. And then we renovated it for 6 months and turned it from a bed and breakfast into more of a real estate office. And it's very cool because now it really is kind of central to our marketing.
Sure.
And it's a very memorable place if you go there. It doesn't
Yeah.
really feel like a lot of real estate offices do, which I think helps us out.
It certainly doesn't. I mean, it feels like you guys just knocked it out of the park. I mean, it has a farmhouse but modern
Yeah.
feel. I mean, it's all like open collaborative workspaces. So you guys may be ahead of your time. Google's probably taking notes from you guys on how
They haven't called yet.
how
So.
to do that. Yeah, Jamie Dimon hasn't called me either. But do you guys ever have anybody that's like works with League just because they're like, hey, we drove by and saw the building?
We do get walk-ins, but what we do, like I had a graduation party for my son there yesterday because the space lends itself really well to events.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of hosting of like Fort Worth schools or neighborhood associations, or Fort Worth Historic Society has met there. We'll open it up to people to use the space, and that actually probably brings in more attention to our brokers than anything.
Interesting.
Than just people being like, oh, nice office. Can I come inside? What we do is we try to use the office as like a way to support the community, which in turn introduces us to the community, which is nice. So yes, we probably have 3 or 4 things a month happening in the office that aren't us. They're third parties, or our agents are using it for one of their, whether it's Junior League or Make a Wish has been there. St. Jude used our space. We'll just donate space for them to have their meetings, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. If you haven't been, people that are listening, so mom, and that's really about it. You should go check it out.
I think my mom's going to listen too. So
yeah, there you go.
Know what's up.
That's right. We'll actually go up 100% in viewership today for you. I want to shift gears a little bit. Kind of, I don't know how much time, how long we're into this. We could be 2 hours or 10 minutes. It's hard to know when you come into the capsule back here. But one thing I want to talk about is the real estate landscape. Residential real estate is changing very fast. And I've been in the business for 4 years or so. I mean, back in 21 is when I started. Since then, and I would say even more in the past 6 to 8 weeks, it's felt like there's been like an acceleration in how quickly things are changing with Rockfin and with Lower and Matovo or whatever that company's called. I mean, it feels like things are changing. So I wanted to see what you thought about that, and do you feel like things are going to change? I feel like people that have been in the business either are like, no, man, it's always going to be this way. It's always been this way. It's never going to change. And then I get people that are like, real estate agents and lenders will be gone in 6 weeks. Where are you on the?
Yeah, I think, obviously you can speak to the market as it is now, which it is. It's a reactive market. And so it's an interesting time to be in the business. But I personally, we went to Luke, Jeff, and I, my 2 partners, we went to New York in January for a conference. First, like, national real estate conference I've ever been to. So not just here's what's happening in Fort Worth or here's what's happening in Texas. It was like, no, here's some major players from the whole country. Here's what they think. And about 50% of the thing was on AI. And I walked out there one day, I was like, if I have to listen to one more AI lecture, I'm going to quit. Like, I can't handle talk about AI anymore. And I think because like most people, I don't really understand it. And I don't really get how it's going to affect our market. So it's hard for me. And not to make this an AI thing, but I do think that every industry probably is vulnerable to some AI effects here in the next X number of years. I don't know how long that will be till it hits us, till it hits you guys. And I don't think it will replace a lot of things that we're doing, but it'll definitely change things. There's some really cool ideas out there. There's ideas of like, hey, let's use blockchain for title, right? And instead of having county courthouses and records and this, let's just tap phones and sell houses. That's a cool idea. It's not going to be here for a while, but it makes sense. I can see that developing over the next 15 years, 20 years as people start to dip their toe into that. In the same way that a lot of things that you and I do now are really technology driven. I really believe the best agents, the best lenders, the best title companies will be the ones who work AI, work technology the best. When I was at that conference, they said something that stuck with us, which is like, hey guys, filters are dead. And then goes, this was the CEO of CoStar who was saying this, which CoStar is the biggest real estate company in the world. They dominate the commercial industry. But he was saying filters are dead. He's like, the days of you going onto a website and saying, I want a 5,000 square foot medical office building and this zip code. What do you have? He goes, we're moving away from that. What we want you to be able to do is jump on our website and have an AI bot so good that you can literally talk to it and tell them what you want. And he can be like, well, I have this thing in Granbury. No, I don't like that. All right. It's not enough traffic count. Find me something better traffic count. Okay, great. Well, that one's not got enough parking. Find me something. And you'll interact with an AI bot that way in order to do that. That's going to create specialties, I think, whether it's travel, buying shoes, buying a house, whatever, where people won't be equipped to work with AI as well within a specific industry. So if I'm looking at Austin All's cameras, let's say I wanted to buy a camera, right? I can chat GPT cameras all day long, but at the end of the day, I think most people would rather go to an Austin and let him chat GPT cameras for me so he can translate and tell me, Matt, I've been through everything. These are your options. Here's the prices. Here's what they cost. I really feel like the service of the future will look like that. How it'll hit our industry and when, I have no idea. I do think that people will always need to be involved in these large. If I'm buying, a part at Lowe's, I can scan it on a scanner and tap and go. I don't need to talk to a person. If I'm going to write an $85,000 check, it's an intricate process, and I need to be assured. And so that's where I think we will move more toward who works the best with the technology available, not so much technology replaces us. And that's us and thousands of other industries, I'm sure. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. I've not heard that specific take. We at Service First are using AI in the back end. So we used to have somebody, people upload all kinds of documents and they have to get sorted and classified and read. And when I first started, that was literally like 6 hours a day. I mean, you'd have to go through someone's pay stub line by line, calculate the income, go through their bank statements, look for now
busy work.
Yes, busy work. Like AI, you upload it, it goes through it, sorts, organizes all the documents, gives you an accurate income calculation, and boom, you're done. So, our business is already changing, but I think the thing that people always want to ask is like, does it replace the originator and the loan officer, the person that interacts with the people? And I think like one thing that we forget in our niches, depending on if you're in France or not, for our French listeners, the niches, croissant, and golly, I shouldn't have a podcast. It's stupid, but
that's all right. You're great at it.
Yeah, well, but people just don't even know what they don't know. We did a class for real estate agents the other day, and we were talking about seller concessions. And there's people who do a lot of business that just like not even in their paradigm to even think about like, wow, you can actually do this a little differently. And it was a lesson for me in that even if you gave the average consumer ChatGPT and said, all right, you'd like to buy a house, they don't even know what to ask or what to put in there. In the grand scheme of things, real estate, the friction of doing real estate from a financial perspective is not that great. You pay 3%, 3 to 4% or so for all of your services on a multi-$100,000 transaction. So it's not like, this is my opinion. Will there be squeeze from AI? Probably. And it's already a thing, but that's really interesting that, you talk about going to the Austin and having him do the ChatGPTing for you.
I just think I've got an 18 to 16-year-old, and watching how they do high school now, we're almost, and I don't know this, I don't have any firsthand experience, but heard from people at the university level that AI is so ubiquitous that it's almost as if people said, hey, we can't fight this. We've got to learn how to work with it, right? Even in high school, like that's where they're at, because these kids are going to use it. If the shortcut's there to write a Ronald Reagan report, like the 17-year-old's going to take it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kid who's going to grow up using AI, who's going to walk into, be 27, 28, be like, well, hey, I want to buy a house. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to educate themselves on AI, right? Yeah. That's what they're going to do.
Yep.
And then they're going to seek out a Jake Little or a Matt or whoever to help them, but they're going to come that way. So whoever is in that AI space and is standing next to it will probably capture the client. That's my view.
Yeah. Well, and AI, for better or for worse, is bringing a lot of transparency, especially in the lending side. The residential real estate transaction, most people do it 3 or 4 times in their life.
Yep.
And it happens really fast. So you go from, I don't know anything about this, to sign this,
yeah.
Hurry up. Like
write a $90,000 check. Yeah.
Send the money. Yeah. It's like we don't have time to really explain this to you because you're closing in 14 days.
Exactly.
And we got to do these, I can't explain to you what a 1007 is. It's just not, we don't have that. But with ChatGPT or any other AI model, like they can kind of do that. And they can also, we've had consumers asking us questions about their loan. That's like, that is the only way you would ask me that is if you ask ChatGPT. They're like, what is the MSR value on the back end sale of this loan? And I'm like, okay, 90% of the employees here don't know what that means, and you work at Lockheed Martin, so definitely ChatGPT.
You've been playing,
yeah. But good on them. It helps them get a better deal and know what they're doing, and so that's really interesting. I'll tell one story. Stories make good podcasts. You told me that about 45 minutes ago or an hour ago, and we had a client that we were working with where. And this story will only be relevant for real estate professionals. If you're mom, you're not gonna care about this one. But we had an appraisal come in where basically the appraiser said, hey, there's been a garage conversion and it's not eligible for financing because of that. And the client we were working with threw it into ChatGPT, was able to instantly pull up county records, and we used that to go back to the appraiser and say, hey, this is going to work. So, and it worked.
It did work.
It worked.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
That guy's brilliant. Y'all should hire him.
it was Matt. I wasn't gonna reveal who it was,
Yeah.
but since he just did,
It was
Matt.
That
So
actually
you
was,
used it.
That was like my virgin voyage into ChatGPT too. I had no skills at all. And so if I can do it, it's really scary because that
Yeah.
means most people can probably
Yeah,
do it.
it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, well, there's this permit in 1983, and
Yes.
there's this permit in 1992.
It was so cool, y'all. I pulled up a website with a database and I put it in ChatGPT. I was like, tell me these 3 questions, and it told me. It's wild.
Yeah.
To be able to do something like
Yeah,
that.
saved a real estate transaction.
It
So,
did.
okay, last question I have, and then we'll get out of here. But back to the real estate investing
Mm-hmm.
side. I have a question. I've got one investment property. I'd like to scale that and grow that eventually. But in today's world, where it's not 2008, 2009, there's not quite as many deals to be had. What would be your advice on scaling an investment portfolio today?
Yeah. Right now it's hard. I'm not going to lie to you. Rates are up, prices are up. It's really hard to find good deals. If you said, Matt, I got some money, go find me a rental property, I'd be like, hey, you're not going to probably like what I bring you. There are deals out there. There are people who spend, you got to realize, there are people who spend 60, 70 hours a week. They have teams of VAs cold texting and cold calling looking for one good deal. Like that's what you're up against a lot of times in this world now. So finding good deals is tough. So if you want to be in the real estate space, you got to look at it 2 ways. One, you got to be creative, which is there's different ways of looking at properties. A lot of people are looking at Section 8 deals. Section 8 pays better, specifically in certain zip codes. There are alternative tenants out there who will pay a premium for housing, whether it's MHMR, halfway houses, things like that. A lot of people are looking at a pad splitting, which if you do, check your city codes because this is really tough on those. But where people actually go into houses, split them up and rent them by the bedroom. There are all sorts of things people are doing to try to make investments work. Short-term rental works really well if you can find an area where it's in demand. So that's a strategy people are using. But honestly, right now, most people are looking at these things as an equity play. It's like, hey, if I can cover my expenses, make a little bit of money,
Yeah.
housing is the very best hedge against inflation, specifically residential housing against inflation. It's really, really tends to insulate your money in a high inflationary market. A lot of people looking at it for that, especially here in Texas. Our growth rate, we were so undervalued as a metro area for so long. We're still playing catch up. I truly believe that. Like if you look at our price point, you look at Vegas, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, a lot of kind of Atlanta, southern, southwestern kind of similar cities. Our real estate has been traditionally undervalued and we're growing like crazy. So there is still a lot of equity to be gained in the DFW market, specifically in the housing market, I believe, as we move. So a lot of people are looking at it from that point of view. And the last way is you got to go larger. So you got to get multi-units, quads, sixplexes, eightplexes, things like that, or maybe not as many people can play in that area.
Yeah.
And that can involve going partners or a small fund or things like that, where you can start to really get some scale in order to do that. So I'm a big fan of strategic partnerships. If you've got the right people, particularly a guy maybe with some extra cash and then a guy with a lot of knowledge and time, those are the best partnerships. So I love those. To, growing up being the guy who was the guy with time and effort and now looking for guys like that, that to me is always the best match.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm in the business, right? So we get a lot of investors too that come across. And that's something I've noticed is it's like the average Joe, I keep going back to the TikTok thing, like TikTok investors, they've seen a TikTok. They're like, well, I think this is cool. I want to do it.
Yeah.
And they know that you can put 15% down and buy an investment property. It literally never works because it doesn't cash flow. Like you're losing, it's almost, you almost have to, as a general rule of thumb, have 30% equity in the property or 30% down to make it work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been trying to, I've been looking for something for myself, and I am one of the TikTok people myself because we bought a primary residence right by Dickies Arena. with a 3% interest rate and kept it as an Airbnb. And of course it works because it's
3%.
3% interest rate. So I'm not like a good real estate investor. It probably ruined me for being a good one. So that's why I ask, because I look at deals and I'm like, I don't know how
it's really
pencil.
Funny, Jake, because the best way I could describe it is if I was like, hey, I really want to play basketball and I'm 5'10". I'm going to go over to Dickies and jump in a Mavs practice. That's what some people with the investing thing are really doing. If you're like, hey, I'm a doctor, I'm going to cash want to buy rent property. I don't think people realize the Shark Tank they're stepping into of guys who spend all of their time, all of their energy, all of their money looking for prime deals that make sense. Those guys suck up all the value add deals.
Yeah.
The competitive advantage guys who are in the business day in and day out are really spending a lot of energy trying to find those deals, right? So if you're just a guy walking into looking around for rental property, you're only looking at the things that all those guys have passed on.
Yeah.
That's your market.
Yeah.
So if you really want a good investment property, you need to find one of those guys who's in that tank and have them help you. That's the only way to do it. And you've got to be open to being a little creative with the way you do it, right? Whether it's putting money down, whether it's a wholesale deal, some of these kind of things, you're going to have to be a little bit more creative. But just, like you said, the guy was like, hey, I got 20% down, I want to buy this and get me a 7.5% loan, Jake, and do all this. Those deals are impossible right now. They just are. They don't work. The only way that works for that guy is if he's buying 100% cash.
Yeah.
If he's doing that, we can get you something that you make 6-7% on maybe. But if you're trying to finance, cap rates are 6.5, 7, and mortgage rates are 7.5, 8. So it's every dollar you borrow hurts your return in that situation.
Yeah. I've got a buddy who's getting into the land development space. So he was, really, really, really green. I mean, he's just getting started. And he would send me deals on like Zillow. He'd be like, hey, here's a plot of land. And I'm like, man, if it's on Zillow and it's land, like, you're so far, like just close the app because it's not
eight people who do this every day looked at it and said, this is why it won't work.
100%. Yeah. And Zillow is so fun to scroll on, but it is, I've got some other buddies who work that full-time job for some large builders that they just do land development. Yeah. And it is like, dude, these guys are pros, like MBA level, like smart guys, full-time looking for deals. And that's, it can be a little discouraging to look, for a guy like me. I'm like, man, I have a full-time job. Yeah. I don't have the time to build an Excel model and then cold call random people to find good deals.
It's exactly. I mean, again, if you told me, Matt, go buy me some land to develop, I wouldn't do you a good job because those guys you talked about, they're gonna beat me every time. But doing what I do, which is small multi, that kind of stuff, we have a couple of agents in our office that's all they do too. If you're like, hey, I got $700,000 I want to invest, I need to borrow at least half. That's what we do, right? We can find you something way better than what you can find on Zillow. That kind of thing, whether it comes from our property management relationship, stuff like that. Like and you have to be patient because they're really hard to find. There's a lot of sharks right now and not a lot of minnows, unfortunately.
What do you think about short sales? Because I've had some short sales come across our desk that are appraising for, 25% over purchase price. So like, would that be an opportunity?
I do. I mean, again, in my experience with short sales was because there haven't been short sales in like 5 years, right? Like there haven't been foreclosures. So we're starting to see those now. We're starting to see situations where people bought 3 years ago that need to move, that their house is about worth the same, what they bought it for, and they're having to bring money to closing. That equals short sale requests. And short sales, I think it depends on the lender you get. Most of the lenders coming out of the gate, probably short sales, may be a little bit aggressive on what they think they can get. They have to be educated in the market just like everybody else. Yeah. But they're appraising high because data from 6 months ago is prettier than the data now. So you go back and say, oh yeah, there's comps for this. Well, because 6 months ago, people were paying more for properties, especially right now, we're in a little bit of a trench. They'll appraise, but there's no active buyer right now for them because the market shifted toward buyers so much. So there's always opportunity in short sales. They're unpredictable. I loved REOs if those start coming around,
Yeah.
which is after a bank forecloses, the bank puts the property up for sale. Generally, those tend to be good. And then there are guys that all they do is buy off the courthouse steps, which that's its own animal in itself, which is a little bit different. And you got to have more capital to do that.
Yeah.
So whereas these other things, you can borrow money traditionally.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, those are all opportunities there. But the best opportunities though are just being in the market every day, and being ready, willing, and able for when that time comes. Where there's a house across the street from me yesterday that listed. It was a great deal, and I called the agent, and it was already sold. It was a great deal because somebody knew that agent, and that agent called them and said, "I got a great deal," and they bought it before I could even get to them.
Yeah.
You should be active in the market. That's how you get good deals.
Yeah, I've got this theory, and then we can wrap this thing up. But I've got this theory that like if by the time Jake Little or even Matt is coming around and thinking, this is a pretty good deal, or this is an opportunity, or you have this idea, like that's probably about the time when the bell curve, 80% of the other people are starting to think the same thing.
Yeah.
Every time I found a house, it was on the market for like a year. No activity. By the time I'm coming around to it and thinking, all right, I'll take a look at that, it's under contract.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're all that dissimilar in our thinking as people, and it's hard to get really out in front of that.
Yeah.
But
I would encourage, if that's you though, there's nothing wrong with hitting singles. I feel like what I mean by that is everybody looks for like the home run, right? It's like, I'm just going to wait. And there were a lot of really great baseball players in the Hall of Fame that hit tons of singles. So as investors, hit some singles, man. The home runs will come. They really will. But there's nothing wrong with hitting a bunch of singles.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of deals out there that you can take down that aren't sexy, that you're not going to, tell everybody about on podcasts one day.
Yeah.
But still treat you really, really well.
Yeah.
Because they're strong deals. You put them in your portfolio. And a lot of singles makes a Hall of Fame hitter. That's something I tell a lot of my people all the time too. Is like if we're waiting for the hanging curveball we can hit out of the park, like good luck.
Yeah.
They don't come
strike
around.
out.
They don't. Yes, they don't come around that often.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit some singles. So
yeah, that's good advice. I think it's a good place to end.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
dude, thanks for having me.
This is a lot
Sorry
of
I
fun.
talked so much in the beginning. So
No, that's the point of the podcast.
Yeah, okay.
It's just for that. It's plenty of talking. So thanks for coming on. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.